In this episode, I'll discuss 5 reasons why sleep is crucial for health, what circadian rhythm is and its link to sleep, and 10 tips for promoting restorative and restful sleep. Welcome to The Thriving Mama, the podcast that teaches you not just how to survive, but to thrive in motherhood. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Davis. So I want to begin this episode by sharing a story with you. This happened when my son was 2 years old. So to give you a little bit of backstory, my son, I breastfed him until he was 2.5. First time mom, I was thinking I was doing all the right things, but in hindsight, I probably was not doing all the right things, for myself, because I think I might have shared this before in another episode, but I had a very, very difficult time breastfeeding. So my son was latched on to me. It felt like 24/7. So just to give you an idea of when I would pump, I would get like 3 ounces. I was usually in the ballpark of 1.5 to 2. And it was very disheartening and frustrating. And so I knew that my baby wasn't getting tons of milk every time he fed. So that was an issue. And so I would say what the bigger issue was, and that was something I'll give you guys a little caveat. There were things that I did to try to address that. Like I did all of the things with the supplements and the different foods that promote milk production, but none of that really seemed to work for me. And so it might give me an extra half an ounce, but it really did not do much for me. So I was just with both of my kids, it was hard for me to generate good volume of milk. And so it was hard for me because my son, he fed all the time and it was in the middle of the night. And I remember thinking, I woke up in the middle of the night one night thinking that it's never going to end. I'm never going to sleep again. I'm never going to feel like myself again. And it was really, really frustrating. And that was probably around the time he was 1.5 years old. And that frustration just kept on building. And I remember sitting on the couch. That this is what I was alluding to at the beginning of the episode. I remember sitting on the couch when he was 2 years old, just crying. I could not stop crying. Obviously, my hormones were a mess, but I was getting no sleep. And I literally remember saying out loud, I'm never going to sleep again. I did not think that my sleep would ever normalize. And it was that moment that I cognizantly decided that I needed to stop breastfeeding for my own health. And because if it was up to him, we kid around about this in our house. I'm like, you'd still be breastfeeding to this day if you could, because he did not want to stop. He did not want to stop at all. And I get it. I mean, it's comfort, it's nurture, it's, your nutrition. There's so many awesome things that come with it. But at some point you have to decide, what's good for both of you, not just what's good for one of you. And so I decided at that moment we were going to stop. And obviously it was a 6-month process because I made it to almost 2.5 years breastfeeding him. And it was really interesting because I had to buy books and I had to mentally prepare him. And I slowly weaned him, which was very different with my daughter. My daughter, I knew at the 1-year mark, she was done. And by her first birthday, literally on her first birthday, we had stopped. So I was much more intentional about that. And it was a good learning experience. But that sleep deprivation, I had incredible brain fog. My mood was all over the place. I had no energy. I'm not a person who naps, and I would nap when he napped sometimes because I did not have any energy. And I saw the toll that it took on me. And so that's what we're going to get into today. We're going to be talking about the importance of sleep in the lives of everyone, but especially mamas. Want to chat and get more personalized support? I'm offering podcast listeners a free 20-minute Thriving Mama check-in where we'll evaluate your physical, mental, and emotional health and provide useful resources to help you on your journey. You'll find that link in the show notes. So back to my sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation is a very prominent thing that I see in my practice now. When I do an intake with new moms or even kids sometimes, I'm seeing it a lot in kids. But when I do an intake, I very rarely see a person who goes to bed at a reasonable hour, can easily fall asleep, stays asleep, and then wakes up feeling refreshed. So that's really, really important, because what I'm going to be doing for the next, kind of several episodes when I'm doing some of the solo episodes is talking about the foundations of health that I see that people are missing, and will also undo even the best laid treatment plans. Like, I could get a person into my practice and we could do, all of the testing. We could work on their emotions and work on their trauma. And if they are not sleeping, they are not going to heal. And these are some of the things that I'm going to be talking about. So sleep, I would say, is absolutely number one. Not managing stress. That would just be stress outside of the context of like trauma related, issues. I'm talking about day-to-day stress, just letting life control you rather than you setting the stage for life. So there's that one. And then blood sugar regulation. That one it kind of falls into the category of metabolic and also, a lifestyle factor, because there are many things like good sleep is, a crucial portion of blood sugar regulation. And so is moving your body. And so is making, some of the right diet choices. So we're going to talk about all of that stuff. But today we're starting off with sleep, because sleep is by far one of the most important pieces, because that's when your body regenerates and heals. And if you're not doing that, it's going to be really, really difficult to heal in any capacity. It's funny because so many moms that come into my practice, it's like, what are your main issues? It's a lot of it's lacking energy, brain fog, poor memory, mood swings, irritability, anxiety, sadness, so many different things. And all of that, ties into sleep. And we're going to get into the reasons why it ties into sleep. And it's like, you're going through that as a mom, and, you add, crying babies or cranky kids or even adult children who are mad at you, that just creates the recipe for a mama meltdown when you're kind of in the throes of all of that. And it's not a pleasant state to be in. And so what I'm going to tell you now is these are some of the key reasons why sleep is essential to good health. Number one, I would say, and most important, is restoration and repair. So during sleep, this is when your body undergoes various restorative processes, such as like tissue repair, cell growth, muscle recovery, and many, many more. But these primarily occur during your sleep stages. And that's one of the things that promotes physical health. You have, like I said, mentioned cell growth, you have cell turnover. This is where your body like clears itself and rids itself of, dead cells, the cells that are no longer needed. It will also like tag certain other cells that should be kind of eliminated because they're not healthy cells anymore. There's a lot of things that help happen during this period of time when you're sleeping. So second is cognitive function. So sleep is essential for cognitive processes such as memory consolidation, learning, problem solving, decision making. It helps organize and store information that's gathered during the day when you're awake. And this is also when our brains do cleaning and housekeeping through the glymphatic system. Yes, you heard that. It's like lymphatic with a G. It's glymphatic. And so that is kind of where your brain kind of wash, rinse, repeat of it kind of, that's the cycle that happens in your brain. It's your brain essentially clearing itself out and ridding itself of cellular debris. It's kind of going through a detoxification, if you will. That is a really, really crucial piece of the puzzle for brain health. And that is something that takes place during that period of time. But also, a lot of women struggle with brain fog and memory issues and even decision making, like I mentioned during this time, like if you're having impaired sleep. So it really is a huge piece of the puzzle to keep your brain healthy is, making sure you have good sleep. The third piece is emotional regulation. Adequate sleep supports emotional stability and helps regulate your mood. It helps support the the healthy production of neurotransmitters. And those are things like dopamine and serotonin that help regulate your mood and also are tied into sleep as well. So, for serotonin and melatonin come from the same basic amino acid. And so that also plays into all of this as well. And just in general, lack of sleep can lead to increased irritability and anxiety and even depression. So one of the things that I do see in practice is that people who don't get good sleep, they tend to fall into a few buckets. They either are that person who's kind of irritable all the time. They also fall into a bucket of maybe being sad or like full on depressed or even lacking just general affect, like not having much emotion at all. Or else they fall into the third bucket, which is like very anxious. And for all of these, it kind of harkens back to, that restorative process and the production of neurotransmitters. And so it's really, really important if you are feeling any of these to make sure that you try to get your sleep on track. The fourth piece of the puzzle is physical health. Sleep plays a significant role in maintaining a healthy immune system. Chronic sleep deprivation is associated with a higher risk of various chronic health issues, including obesity and diabetes and cardiovascular disease and mood disorders and cancer and weakened immune response, which leaves you vulnerable to other infections or, things of that nature. So staying on top of your sleep for just general physical health and longevity is very, very important. And the last piece of the puzzle that I'm going to mention, the fifth one, is hormone balance. So sleep helps regulate the release of hormones. So including those related to appetite, and those would be like ghrelin and leptin, stress, which would be cortisol, growth, which would be growth hormone, blood sugar, which is going to largely be insulin and glucagon, and then reproduction, which is going to be estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Sleep is crucial to the feedback loops in your body that regulate the production and distribution of hormones in your body. So I'm trying to keep all of this high level because I don't want to go down any crazy rabbit holes, because each one of these topics we could dive deeply into. So I'm just trying to keep it very high level. But main point is hormone balance. You need sleep to regulate the release of those hormones. So it's really, really critical. And so obviously we've talked about, why we need good sleep, but some of the factors that promote good quality sleep are important too. So I'm going to dive into those next. Your sleep environment. This is number one. Creating a comfortable sleep environment is crucial. And what I usually tell people is the first step. So you need to have the list of things that I give to people are like a comfortable yet supportive mattress and pillows, your room temperature adjusted to your preference. Studies show that for most people, it's 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. However, everyone's different. I know some people who like to sleep colder than that and some people who like to sleep warmer than that. It kind of depends on your own physiological state. Also, minimizing noise and light disturbance. So blackout shades or curtains are great. A sleep mask is also really, really helpful. I use one of those in the summer because the sunlight comes into my room pretty early. So I've been using my sleep mask lately. And then if you're a person who does not like to sleep in complete silence, white noise might be good for you, or having a fan on. I know personally I fall into that category. I tend not to be able to sleep when there is too much noise. I'd say too much of the wrong, there's too much of the wrong noise. Like if you're hearing people or you're hearing construction, that's not good. But white noise, for me and a lot of other people, it's fine. There are some people who prefer to sleep and complete silence if they can. And that's great. Remember, it's always about what works best for you and your body. Number 2, behind the sleep environment is getting a consistent sleep schedule. Trying to maintain a consistent sleep schedule by going to bed and waking up at the same time every day, even on weekends, is huge. This helps regulate your body's internal clock or your circadian rhythm. And ideally, I like to have people go to bed by 10, if the latest 11, because a lot of those biological processes we were talking about, the restorative and healing processes that sleep provides, those start to happen not too long after that period of time. So the later you're going to bed, you could be missing that crucial window of restoration and healing if you go to sleep too late. So like I said, going to bed by 10 o'clock or 11 would be ideal. Next is limiting screens before you go to bed. The blue light emitted by screens such as tablets, phones, computers, TVs, all of those can interfere with the production of the sleep-inducing hormone melatonin. So avoiding screens for at least 2 hours. I tell people 1 hour, ideally 2 hours before bed. And I also would say to set the stage for sleep, turn off the lights in your house and only keep the necessary ones on, and keep your house dim. There are also red lights that you can buy. They're extra, basically. It's essentially creating a light situation that is promoting of sleep. It's the opposite of the blue light. So that's something else you can do. But I always tell people to dim all the lights, shut off all the lights, only keep on the ones that are necessary, keep it dim. If you have to have a screen on, put a screen, like you can use apps. They essentially are dimmers of your screen. You can also there was an app, it used to be called Flux, and I'm not sure if it's still in existence because my phone has a built-in red light option on it. But there are apps out there that you can get that actually gives that red light effect if you absolutely must be looking at a screen. But the screen piece is a twofold issue. Not only is the blue light, emitting from it causing issues with the production of melatonin, but the other piece of it is that it's getting your brain thinking, and you don't necessarily want your brain doing things like that before sleep because it's not promoting sleep. You want your brain to be calming down. You want to be coming down from the day and releasing things. I always tell people, if you have something on your mind, write it down, get out a journal or a piece of paper, keep it by your bed. And if you can't get rid of it when you're laying there, write it down in a journal. So there's that. That's kind of the twofold piece with screen time. It's not just the blue light. It's also how it stimulates your brain. The next piece is physical activity. Regular physical activity is a very underrated contributor to sleep quality. If the one caveat here is avoiding vigorous activity about 3 to 4 hours before bedtime, because sometimes that energizes you because you might get a rise in your cortisol, which will stimulate you and not calm you down. So I usually tell people to try to do your vigorous workouts in the first half of the day or earlier afternoon if you don't have time to do it earlier. Another thing to avoid close to bedtime is a heavy meal. Heavy meals or caffeines or even large amounts of fluid 2 to 3 hours before bedtime can contribute to an unrestful sleep. And they might cause you discomfort during the night because if you eat a heavy meal before you go to bed, your body is going to be, working on digestion and not necessarily sleep. So those are all things that can contribute to poor quality sleep. Stress management. This shows up everywhere. Practicing relaxation techniques such as meditation and deep breathing or yoga to manage stress are super helpful because those high stress levels can impact sleep quality largely by affecting hormone production. So we were talking about cortisol. If your cortisol is high all the time, it's going to counteract the melatonin. It's going to suppress melatonin, and it's not going to allow for a restful sleep. The other piece of it is it's also going to keep your brain going. If you're constantly thinking and stressed, your brain tends to not shut down and quiet itself for sleep. And so that's another big piece of the puzzle is making sure that you can quiet your mind for sleep. And like I mentioned before, a journal, writing that stuff down so you can physically get it out. Sometimes even just saying it out loud helps you release it. Also, limiting alcohol, nicotine, and certain medications before bedtime. Also, those can disrupt sleep patterns. And so the irony about alcohol, while it might make you drowsy, it leads to fragmented sleep, which has been proven in many studies. It's like lots of times people feel very tired after they've consumed alcohol, and then they lay down in bed and they can't fall asleep. And it's because it absolutely fragments your sleep. And also, I just want to add a note here about, nicotine and certain other medications, because they're stimulants. And just like the exercise or caffeine, that's going to be stimulating. And obviously those things can affect sleep. For people who have really, very dysregulated sleep, I always tell bedroom use. Bedroom use is a big one. So I always tell people to reserve your bedroom for primarily just sleep or other intimate activities or meditation, things that are calming, because this will create a mental association between the bedroom and relaxation. And that's important because that's what we're doing when we're there. Calming activities such as journaling, meditating, breathing, those are all good things to do in the comfort of your bedroom. And so that also kind of segues us into having a winding down, establishing a nice pre-sleep routine is helpful. So for some people that might look like reading a book or taking a warm bath and doing some gentle stretches, or like I'd mentioned several times before, journaling, certain things to signal to your body that it's time to unwind and we're getting ready for sleep, because your body tends to take cues from its environment, and it also sees things habitually. So when your body gets used to all of that, it makes it easier for your body to fall into sleep. Sunlight exposure. So that gets into circadian rhythm. And that I'm going to talk about in just a minute, because I feel like you can't really talk about sleep without talking about circadian rhythm and what affects it. So I'll just give you a little blip here, but we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And that's just exposing your body to natural sunlight during the day to regulate your body's internal clock. So like I always say to people, at a minimum, try to get some sunlight in the morning, preferably within 30 minutes of waking up. It's important that the sun goes directly into your eyes from a certain angle, because that stimulates your brain to produce certain chemicals that actually regulate the circadian pattern. So that's a really, really important piece of the puzzle. You want to get the sunlight directly into your eyes and not blocked by sunglasses or a hat or anything like that. And it's also important to note that it's important for you to do this even when it's gray outside, because you're still getting some penetration of the sunlight through the clouds. So it doesn't matter if it's super bright or cloudy. You can do this every single day, and it's very helpful to regulate your circadian rhythm. And the last piece to mention in this section is monitoring your sleep patterns. Pay attention to how well you're sleeping and adjust your habits if you notice sleep disruptions in your sleep-wake cycle. If you try the methods that I've mentioned above and it doesn't work, there's lab testing you can do, anything ranging from sleep studies for sleep apnea to hormone studies. There's also nutrient labs for certain types of nutrients, and that contribute to sleep as well. So if you do all of the things that I mentioned and it's not working, there are some more advanced things you can do. As I mentioned earlier, I wanted to make a special note about circadian rhythm balance, because you really can't talk about sleep without talking about your internal clock. And so I'm going to dive a little bit more deeply into the circadian rhythm. Your circadian rhythm is a natural internal biological clock that regulates your sleep-wake cycle and many physiological processes in a 24-hour cycle. And so people tend to think of circadian rhythm only with regard to sleep. But almost every hormone in your body has a circadian rhythm. The chemicals, inflammatory chemicals in your body have circadian rhythm. Your immune system and immune cells and immune chemicals all have a circadian rhythm. Everything, and your organs do too. And so everything in your body operates this way. So the more you can optimize it, the better. And so Your circadian rhythm is primarily influenced by external cues such as lightness and darkness, and it's controlled by a region in the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN for short. Circadian rhythm, affects not only sleep patterns, but like I mentioned before, hormone release, body temperature, metabolism, cognitive function, and more. It regulates so much. And so some tips to optimize circadian rhythm throughout the day are, one, was that morning exposure to natural light, but not just the morning exposure. I'm going to dive into the nuance of it a little bit. Upon awakening, exposing yourself to the natural sunlight helps you reset your internal clock and signals to your body that it's time to wake up by increasing cortisol and decreasing serotonin and melatonin. If sunlight, like I said before, if sunlight is unavailable, if it's dull outside, you can still do it. But bright artificial light can also be effective, but you have to have it so that it's stimulating the sunlight. So one of the issues that people have is if they're doing like an artificial sun lamp, they'll put it right in front of their eyes. It doesn't have the same effect. If it's down below you or right at eye level, it's not going to work. You have to have it above. So it's simulating what the sun would do. And so I also tell people to compound this effect and have an even more beneficial effect. Try to get outside for 5 to 10 minutes in the afternoon and also in the evening to then stimulate serotonin and decrease cortisol, because that sunlight hitting your eyes and your retina at that certain angle, it depends, like we were talking about before, the angles of the sun and how it's hitting your retina, that will signal to your body to, stimulate these hormones that are going to produce get your body ready for sleep. And it's going to decrease cortisol, which is beneficial. You want that to happen in the later portion of the day. So getting outside, ideally in the morning, midday, and evening is great. And I always tell people, if it's hard for you to do one of the latter, then just pick one. Do the morning. Morning for sure is the most important. But, if you can get either an afternoon, like little stroll in, like in the middle of your day, or even after dinner walk, that's a great way to get that exposure to the sunlight. And again, the consistent sleep habits, we mentioned this above, that's going to really help and train and reinforce your body's natural sleep-wake cycle. Staying active and moving through the day is also going to help this. A lot of people that I talk to in my practice mention that when they work out or when they consistently move or walk or, they're doing stuff during the day, it's much easier for them to fall asleep than if they just sat around all day. So that's another piece of the puzzle. And then hydration. This one, it seems kind of obvious, but staying hydrated is really important because dehydration can affect your overall energy levels and well-being, which will then impact your ability to, actually do the things you need to do to maintain your proper sleep cycles. And so optimizing circadian rhythm requires a combination of, kind of more consistent routine, exposure to natural light, and mindful choices throughout the day. And so by aligning all of your activities with your body's natural rhythm, you can improve your sleep quality and overall well-being. So one thing that I want to leave you with is something I hear from moms a lot is, they don't find it easy to make time for themselves, and they don't find it easy to prioritize themselves. And I get this because, like I said, when I was nursing my first one, it was a struggle. Like in the back of my mind, I kept on judging myself for not nursing my baby for 5 years. I had friends who had nursed kids for 5 years, and obviously that was not in the cards for me. And at what, it came to that, push came to shove, and I had to choose my health and truthfully, almost my sanity, and getting more sleep and getting consistent sleep. And that's what that's what pushed me to actually wean my son. And I just want to leave you with, everybody is different and everybody has to make different choices, and don't judge yourself on that. I know it's very difficult to see what other people are doing or hear what other people are doing and think to yourself, well, I'm not doing that. do what's best for yourself. There is no true right or wrong way to do any of this. It's just important that you do what's best for you and your family. And if that means weaning your baby earlier so that you can, get sleep and be a functional, happy person, that's okay. If it means, maybe adjusting your social life and adjusting your families, even your kids, kind of their calendars or their sleep schedules, that's okay too. You have to do what works best for you and your family and ignore the outside noise and, just do what's best for you, because it's very easy to get caught up in all of the, the judgment that can happen. Seemingly, we think it's happening from outside sources, but a lot of times it's just us judging ourselves harshest. And so this is me telling you, don't give in to that. Just, do what's best for you, because I've been doing this type of work for almost 20 years now. And truthfully, there's no magic bullet. There's no perfect way to do things. There's no true right or wrong. There just is, there's just what's right for you. If you made it this far, I truly appreciate you. Remember, knowledge is just the beginning. Taking action is what truly sparks change. If you're overwhelmed and don't have enough energy to make it through the day, I invite you to book a free 20-minute coaching call with me. It's a no-obligation chat where we can discuss your health goals and how I might be able to help you achieve them. Visit the link in the episode description to book that call. Until next time, keep striving for wellness, and remember, you have the power to not just survive, but thrive in motherhood.